My name is Iris Calloway. I'm 32. And 2 years ago, I found out that a college fund exists. Had existed. For me. Since I was born. My parents had opened it when I was 3 weeks old, contributed to it for 15 years, and then, in the summer I turned 18 and won a full academic scholarship to the university I had worked my entire childhood to get into. They transferred every dollar of it to my younger brother's account. Without telling me. Without asking me. Without any conversation that acknowledged that the money had ever been mine to begin with. I found out not from my parents, not from my brother, but from a tax document. A 529 account statement that arrived at my childhood home address 2 years ago, forwarded to me by mistake in a bundle of other mail my mother was sending, with my name on the original account and my brother's name on the transfer recipient line, and a transfer date of August 14th, the same summer I started college on a scholarship I had earned by studying so hard for 4 years that I sometimes ate lunch in the library so I wouldn't lose the study table I'd claimed at 7 in the morning. That scholarship. That summer. That transfer date. All of them landed on me at the same time, on a Tuesday evening in my apartment, and I sat with a tax document in my hand and understood, slowly and then completely, that the money my parents had saved for my education had never, in their minds, been fully mine. It had always been available. Available for whoever needed it most. And when I stopped needing it, it moved. Before I tell you what happened when I called my mother, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Only if this story is sitting somewhere real inside you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back. I need to tell you about the scholarship first. Not to set up a contrast, not as a before and after structure for the story. But because the scholarship is the reason the fund transfer happened, and because understanding what I did to earn it is essential to understanding why learning about the transfer felt like a specific and calculated kind of wrong rather than simply a family decision I disagreed with. Grew up in a middle-class household, in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. My father, Kenneth, is a civil engineer who spent 30 years working for a municipal infrastructure department. My mother, Sandra, is a teacher. 2nd grade. She has taught 2nd grade at the same school for 26 years, which tells you something about her. She is the kind of person who finds something she is genuinely good at and commits to it completely, without needing it to be glamorous, visible, or recognized by anyone outside the room where she does it. She is an excellent mother in most of the ways that matter. I want to make that clear because this story is not about a bad person. It is a story about a person who made a decision she may have found logical and that produced, in me, a specific and lasting harm that I am still working through. Those two things can coexist. I have learned that they often do. My brother, Tyler, is 4 years younger than me. He is 28 now. He is, and I say this with genuine affection and without minimizing what happened, someone who has always required more active support from our parents than I have. Not because he is less capable or less intelligent, but because Tyler and I are different people with different temperaments and different relationships to the specific activities that academic institutions reward. And the specific activities that academic institutions reward happen to be the ones that I find naturally compelling and that Tyler finds naturally difficult. I like to read. I like to write. I like the specific pleasure of understanding something complicated by working through it systematically until the complexity resolves into clarity. Tyler likes to build things, to work with his hands, to understand systems through physical engagement rather than through abstract analysis. These are equally valid ways of being a person in the world. They are not equally rewarded by traditional academic institutions. and that difference had produced, by the time I was in high school, a family dynamic in which I managed my own academic trajectory with minimal parental involvement while Tyler's academic struggles consumed a significant portion of our parents' attention and energy. I'm not resentful of Tyler for this. I want to be clear about that. What I am describing is not a competition between Tyler and me but a context in which a specific financial decision was made, and the context matters to understanding the decision. The fund. My parents opened a $529 college savings account for me when I was 3 weeks old. This is a standard educational savings vehicle, and the decision to open it early is, in itself, a sign of exactly the kind of careful, forward-looking parenting my parents genuinely practiced. They contributed to it for 15 years. I know now, because the tax document showed me the balance at the time of transfer, that by the summer I was 18 the account contained $67,000. $67,000, built across 15 years of consistent contributions by 2 teachers' incomes that did not have a great deal of discretionary room. That money represented a real sacrifice, made consistently and patiently, and I want to acknowledge that before I describe what they did with it, they opened a $529 account for Tyler when he was born too. I found this out in the same tax document bundle, in a different statement, a statement for Tyler's account that showed its opening balance, its contribution history, and, in the same month as my transfer, a large deposit that matched exactly the $67,000 from my account. Tyler's account, at the time of the transfer, had contained $14,000. After the transfer, it contained $81,000. I had won the scholarship in April of that year. It was a full academic scholarship, covering tuition, fees, and a housing stipend, renewable annually for 4 years contingent on maintaining a minimum grade point average that I was in absolutely no danger of failing to maintain. I had applied for it in January, with the specific focused intensity of someone who understood that the scholarship was the difference between attending the university I had worked toward and attending a school that was within the family's budget without institutional support. I had written 4 drafts of the application essay. I had asked my English teacher to review 2 of them. I had submitted with the specific calibrated confidence of someone who has done everything within their control and is now waiting to find out what is outside their control. The scholarship was announced in April. I called my mother from the school parking lot, sitting in my car, shaking slightly in the way you shake when something you have wanted for a long time has just arrived, and your body has not yet caught up to the reality of it. She cried. My father came to the phone and said, "Iris, I am so proud of you." I held those words for a long time because they were real and I believed them and I still believe them, even now. The pride was genuine. It was also, I now understand, followed relatively quickly by a private financial calculation that I was not included in August, 14 weeks after the scholarship announcement. My parents transferred $67,000 from my college savings account to Tyler's. Did not know. I was at orientation that week, learning the layout of a campus I had been dreaming about for 4 years, meeting the people who would become my friends and my colleagues for the next decade of my life, beginning the chapter one had built myself to begin. While I was doing that, in Columbus, a financial transaction moved $67,000 out of an account with my name on it and into an account with my brother's name on it. And no one said a word. I want to tell you about the tax document. Because the specific way I found out matters to understanding the particular quality of the discovery. 2 years ago, I was 29, living in my own apartment, working in science communications at a research institute. 7 years past the scholarship and the orientation week and the chapter that had begun. I received a bundle of forwarded mail from my mother, the kind of package parents send when they are clearing out accumulated correspondence that has continued arriving at the childhood address despite every effort to redirect it. In the bundle, mixed with alumni newsletters and expired store circulars, was a 529 account statement. A corrected annual statement for an account I did not know still had records associated with my childhood address. Opened it in the way you open forwarded mail, without particular attention, expecting it to be a document requiring me to update an address with some institution that had not received the update. I read the account name. My name. I read the account number. An account number I did not recognize. I read the balance at the time of the statement. 0. I read the transaction history. A single transaction. Transfer out. August 14th, 14 years ago. Amount. $67,000. Recipient account. Tyler James Calloway. I read it. I read it again. I set it on my kitchen table, and I went to my bedroom, and I sat on the edge of my bed for approximately 15 minutes, not doing anything in particular except allowing the specific quality of what I had just read to assemble itself into a complete picture. $67,000. Transferred 14 years ago. The summer I won my scholarship. The summer I started college. Tyler's account. No conversation. No acknowledgement. No letter that said, Iris, because you won the scholarship and you don't need this, we are moving it to Tyler's account where it can help him. Nothing. Just a transaction. A document. A Tuesday evening in my apartment at 29, 14 years too late to do anything about it except understand it, called my mother the following morning. Not that evening, because I have learned, over the years, that the conversations I have the morning after I have processed something are better than the conversations I have in the first hour of having processed it. The morning after version of me is clearer and less raw and more capable of saying exactly what I mean rather than what the first hour of feeling has produced. She picked up warmly. We talked briefly about ordinary things, the way we always begin calls. And then I said, Mom, I received a forwarded 529 statement in the mail yesterday. For an account in my name. The account is at 0. The last transaction was a transfer to Tyler's account 14 years ago. I need you to tell me what happened. The pause that followed was shorter than I expected. Which told me that she had, at some level, always known this conversation was possible and had prepared for it, the way people prepare for things they believe are unlikely while understanding they are not impossible. She said, Iris. She said my name the way she says it when she is about to say something she has been carrying. She said, when you won the scholarship, we talked about what to do with the fund. Your father and I talked about it. And we decided that since your education was covered, the money would be better used for Tyler, who was going to need more support. I said, you talked about it. She said, yes. I said, did you talk to me about it? She said, we didn't think we needed to. Your education was covered. I said, Mom, the money was in an account with my name on it. She said, it was a 529 account. It's education savings. We managed it. I said, it was designated for my education. The fact that I secured my own funding doesn't mean the money wasn't mine to be consulted about. She said, Iris, we were trying to be practical. Tyler was going to have college costs, and the fund was sitting there, and your scholarship covered everything. I said, the fund was sitting there. In my name. She said, yes. I said, and you moved it to Tyler's account without telling me. She said, we didn't think you'd mind. I said, you didn't think I'd mind. She said, you didn't need it. I said, Mom. Whether I needed it is not the same question as whether I should have been told about it. She was quiet. Then she said, I suppose that's true. I want to tell you about what I felt in that call, because it is more complicated than anger and I think the complication is important. I did feel angry. The anger was real, and it was appropriate, and I am not going to minimize it. But underneath the anger was something else, something that I have been working to understand with my therapist over the past 2 years and that I think I can now describe accurately. What I felt underneath the anger was the specific feeling of being seen as a problem that had solved itself rather than as a person who had solved a problem. The fund, in my parents' accounting, had become available because I had made myself not need it. And the fact that I had made myself not need it had been treated as permission to redirect it rather than as an accomplishment worth acknowledging in its own financial terms, had earned the scholarship. I had earned it through 4 years of specific, deliberate, sustained effort. And the reward for that effort, in my family's accounting, had been not that the fund became mine to use for other things, for graduate school, for a down payment, for any of the 100 things that $67,000 could have supported in a young person's life, but that the fund became available for someone else. The better I did, the less I received. That is the specific logic that the decision encoded, and it is the logic that still sits with me, that I am still working to metabolize into something I can fully set down. Why Father called me 2 days after my conversation with my mother. He called, I think, because my mother had told him about our call and because he wanted to have the conversation himself rather than have it happen entirely through her. My father is not, as I have said, a bad person. He is someone who makes decisions with the specific compressed pragmatism of an engineer, solving for the efficient outcome rather than pausing to consider all of the variables. And in this specific case the variable he had not adequately weighted was the experience of the person whose fund he was redirecting. Said, Iris, your mother told me you found the transfer document. I said, yes. He said, I want to explain our thinking. I said, I'd like to hear it. He said, when you won the scholarship, we were looking at Tyler's situation, and it looked very different from yours. You had your path. Tyler was struggling. The fund was there, and it was education savings, and Tyler had a 529 too, but it was smaller, and we thought the practical thing was to consolidate them. I said, did it occur to you to ask me? He paused. He said, it occurred to us that it might upset you unnecessarily since you didn't need the money. I said, Dad, I'd like to offer you a different framing. I didn't need the money. I had secured alternative funding for a specific purpose. The money could have been used for graduate school, for a house, for any number of things. The existence of the scholarship didn't eliminate my stake in what had been saved in my name. He said, I see that now. I said, did you see it then? Another pause. Then he said, no. We were focused on Tyler. I said, I know. He said, I'm sorry, Iris. I said, I know you are. Here is the thing about the apology. I believed it. Both of them. My mother's careful acknowledgement and my father's direct sorry. I believed them because I know my parents and I know that remorse, when they feel it, is real rather than performed, and the remorse I heard in both of their voices was genuine. But I also knew, and I said this to my therapist rather than to them because I was not yet ready to say it to them, that a genuine apology for a decision that has already been executed and cannot be undone is something different from a genuine correction of the thing the decision represented. The money was Tyler's now, had been Tyler's for 14 years, had funded his education and whatever else followed from it, And no amount of genuine remorse could move it back into the account it had left on August 14th of the summer I started college on a scholarship I had earned with 4 years of 7 in the morning library tables and 4 drafts of an essay I had asked my English teacher to review. I want to tell you about Tyler, because Tyler is a part of this story and I have not been fair to him by leaving him out of it until now. Tyler knew. He had known since he was 14, when our parents had told him, in the specific uncomplicated way they had chosen not to tell me, that they were adding money to his college savings from mine because Iris won a scholarship and doesn't need it. He had absorbed this information, at 14, as a fact about his financial situation rather than as a decision requiring his evaluation. He had not thought to question it because 14-year-olds generally do not interrogate their parents' financial management decisions, and because the framing our parents had used Iris doesn't need it had made it sound like a practical adjustment rather than a decision that my sister might feel differently about. Tyler called me 1 week after my calls with our parents. Not because they had asked him to. Because he had heard, from our mother, that I knew, and because he is someone who, whatever his relationship to academic institutions, has always had a clear and uncomplicated relationship to fairness in his interactions with other people, and who understood, when he learned that I had found out, that there was something he needed to say to me directly. He said, "Iris, I'm really sorry. I didn't know they hadn't told you." I said, "I know you didn't." He said, "I've thought about it a lot since Mom told me you knew. And I want you to know that I've thought about it a lot over the years too, actually, since they told me. Something about it never felt completely right to me even at 14. I said, "What felt not right about it?" He said, that they described it as "you don't need it," like that was a complete answer. Like the question of whether you'd want to know wasn't part of the equation at all. I said, "Yes. That's it. Exactly that." He said, "I don't know what to do with that, honestly. I can't give the money back in the sense that it's already been used and it's been 14 years. But I want you to know that I would have wanted you to know, if it had been me. I would have wanted to be asked, even if the answer was the same." I said, "I know. And I believe you." He said, "What happens now?" I said, "I'm not sure. I'm still figuring out what I want this to mean." He said, "Okay." He said, "Whatever you decide, I'm on your side. Even if you're deciding something about me." I said, "Tyler, I'm not deciding anything about you. This was never about you." He said, "I know. But it involves me. And I want you to know that I know that." I said, "Thank you. That matters. I want to tell you what I decided to do. Not as a dramatic resolution, not as a confrontation or a reckoning or a demand. But as something quiet and practical in mine, which is the register most of my important decisions operate in. I decided to apply to graduate school. I had wanted to apply for 3 years and had been not applying for reasons that I had characterized to myself as financial, which they were, but which were also something else, something I had not quite been able to name until I was sitting with a tax document at 29 and understanding that $67,000 had once been available for exactly this kind of decision and had moved somewhere else without my knowledge. I named it. And then I applied. I was accepted. I started the program the following fall, funding it through a combination of a graduate teaching assistantship and a fellowship and a modest loan that is smaller than it would have been if $67,000 had been available to me at 22 or 25 or 28. It is not the path I would have chosen if I had been given all of the information at the right time. It is a good path, built from what I actually have, which is what paths usually are. My relationship with my parents is different than it was before I found the tax document. Not worse, exactly, but different in the way that things are different when the picture you have of something becomes more complete than it was. I see them more accurately now. The love is real, the care is real, the pride they felt when I won the scholarship was real. And also, the decision they made that summer was a decision that encoded something specific about how they saw me and my needs relative to Tyler and his, and that specificity is now part of what I know, and knowing it means I hold the relationship with a more complete awareness of what it contains than I held it with before. Have had 3 conversations with my parents since the initial calls, conversations that have been honest and careful and that have arrived, I think, somewhere real if not somewhere resolved. My mother said, in the most recent one, that she wished she had thought to talk to me. She said she genuinely had not considered that I might have an interest in the money beyond its immediate purpose. She said she had thought of the scholarship as me being fine and of the fund as a resource that was now free to help Tyler, and that she had not stopped to think about whether being fine was all there was to consider. I said, "That's a good way to put it." She said, "It's not good enough." I said, "No. But it's honest, and I can work with honest. I want to talk to you directly now. Wherever you are. Whatever time it is there, I earned the scholarship. I earned it honestly and completely, and the earning of it was the thing that made the fund available to be transferred without my knowledge. Which means that the better I did, the less I received. I have sat with that specific sentence for 2 years, and I can tell you that it does not get smaller with sitting. It stays the same size. What changes is your relationship to it, the distance between you and the sentence, the ability to hold it without it holding you. There are things my parents did right. They built the fund, consistently, for 15 years. They raised me in a household where education was valued enough that I internalized that value completely and built a scholarship out of it. They told me the truth, eventually, when I asked directly. They apologized, genuinely, when they understood what the decision had meant to me. Those things are real, and also, the fund was in my name. And when I solved the problem it was designed for, it was moved to someone else's name, without a conversation, without an acknowledgement, without a sentence that said, "Iris, you did something extraordinary and here is what we are going to do with the extraordinary thing you did, and here is why, and what do you think?" You are allowed to want that sentence. You are allowed to believe you deserved it. You are allowed to hold the love your parents had for you and the specific decision they made in the same summer with the specific weight of both, without canceling one with the other, without telling yourself that the love is all that counts because the love was real and the decision was also real, and you are allowed to hold the whole thing at once. I am holding it. Most days it is manageable. Some days it is heavy. All days it is mine, and mine to decide what it means, and mine to decide what I build from it. I applied to graduate school. I was accepted. I started. And I am not telling you that as a triumph. I am telling you that, as evidence, what is yours to build, you can build. Even when the materials you have are not the ones you should have had. Even when someone moved the ones you should have had to a different account on August 14th, 14 years ago, without asking you. That is today's story on the family ledger. Leave me a comment. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. Tell me whether there is something in your own story that you solved so completely that the people around you forgot to consider that the solving deserved something more than simply the opportunity to solve something else. I read every single one. Subscribe for the next story every week. And check the description. There is another one I think you will connect with. Thank you for being here.